you're well and having a really good week. Welcome to this week's core message. I just wanted to come quickly and talk to us a little bit about loneliness. Now, loneliness is something that I'm sure we've all experienced at some point in our lives. It's a normal human emotion, and this past year has probably brought it to our attention more than ever before. And before we go further, I just wanted to give us all a shared definition for loneliness so that we all know what we're talking about when we're discussing it together. Loneliness, as defined in the best way that I could find, is a subjective feeling caused by a mismatch in the quantity and quality of the relationships we have versus the ones that we desire. So loneliness is not so much about who you know, it's not so much about how many relationships you have or what types of relationships you have or how much of your time you spend with others. It's more about how you feel and perceive those relationships, how you feel about others and how you feel about the relationships that you have and whether you feel fulfilled by them or not. It's a subjective thing, so each individual will feel slightly differently and will have a slightly different perception of their needs in terms of their social interaction and relationships. But loneliness ultimately is a feeling which in and of itself is not bad, but as we know, feelings are not facts, and sometimes our feelings can skew the way that we perceive others and perceive the relationships that we have. And loneliness is fed by a thought or a belief that we're alone, that ultimately we're not seen, or that we're not wanted or loved, or that we're not accepted, or we're not invited, or that we're not part of the right group, or that we don't have the right support, or whatever else it might be. So loneliness is fed by those thoughts of being alone and not being seen and not having enough. And those thoughts that lead to the feeling of loneliness can then skew the way that we see others, and they can affect our perspective on the relationships that we have. And I think we all have a lean towards towards a couple of different ways in which we can respond to loneliness. I think we all naturally respond in a certain way, and I would just suggest, I'm sure there might be more, but two basic ways in which we can respond to loneliness if we allow those thoughts and those feelings to inform what we do. I think there's two ways in which we often see ourselves responding to loneliness. And the first way that I think we respond in is helplessness. We can feel like we have no control over our own situation and that we are left totally to the mercy of others, just waiting for them to invite us or contact us or input into us. And we often feel like, regardless of how much input we have, it can still feel like it's not quite sufficient. And as a metaphor, to help us understand what that looks like, I've got a charity collection box. Now, charity collection boxes are good. There's nothing wrong with that. We want to support charities. It's a good thing to do. But as a metaphor, I think this stands as an example of helplessness. A charity collection box is usually at the till. It's usually somewhere where where people are buying other things and did not ultimately plan to give, are then maybe gonna throw in a couple of scraps, a few pennies or something left over in here. It stands totally at the mercy of people and people's goodwill, and there's nothing in and of itself that the box can do to make people give, or there's nothing it can do to generate anything. It's just there waiting and hoping that people will put in whatever they can, and that they will input in to make this full. But even when this box is full, it's still only a drop in the ocean to fulfill the need that it's aiming to fulfill. So whatever the cause might be, whether it's a global issue or even a local one, a single charity box is never ever gonna fulfill the need that's there. It's never gonna be sufficient to meet the need that it's aiming to help towards. And I think sometimes when we are lonely, when we feel lonely, and when we choose to believe that we're alone and that we're not supported and that we're not seen, we can respond in helplessness, a bit like this, where we are just waiting for others to input into us, where we feel like there's nothing we can do, there's no control that we have over the situation, and we're just hoping that people will spend whatever time they have, or they will, use their energy or whatever to input into our lives, but even when they do, even when we do have interaction or we do have input, it can leave us feeling unfulfilled. Like even the stuff that we have is only a drop in the ocean of fulfilling that need and that feeling of loneliness, that it's not enough to take that away. Which is why responding to loneliness with helplessness is not going to lead to fulfillment. And there's another way that I think we often respond. Some of us naturally lean towards helplessness, and some of us, I think, naturally lean towards hoarding, which looks a bit like this. This is a kid's money box. It's aimed for kids to learn how to save. So you put money in, and then it's got a limit to how much you can fit in there. And it serves as a metaphor for a different way to respond to loneliness, which looks like hoarding the energy that we have. It's led by that belief and thought that we in ourselves are enough, that we are able to generate for ourselves all that we need, that we don't need anybody else. Then we choose to push other people away and choose to spend our relational energy and investment in ourselves and in the people that are maybe in our immediate family. And we choose to believe that in and of ourselves, we are able to acquire what we need to meet our own emotional needs, and we push everybody else away, and we can then start to see others as a drain on our resources. We want to guard this and hoard this to make sure that nobody takes anything from what we have saved for ourselves, that none of our energy, that none of our time or none of our investment is wasted on what feels like burdens and a drain on us. As other people and as other relationships go. But like with the money box, there's a limit to what we can do for ourselves. There's a limit to what we can acquire for ourselves. There's a limit to the amount of fulfillment that we will get if we choose to believe that we in ourselves are enough and that we don't need anyone or anything. Which is why still hoarding does not lead to a life of fulfillment either. It's only really a distraction from the feeling of loneliness. So whether you lean towards helplessness or hoarding, you might already recognize yourself as one or the other, that they're not gonna lead you to that life of fulfillment. They're not gonna make that feeling of loneliness go away. They're not gonna fulfill you or make you feel loved or seen or accepted in the way that you desire. But I have good news for you, because I think that we have a third option. Because Jesus offers us a relationship with him. Now, if you don't know Jesus, then this might be news to you. But if you already do know Jesus, then you will be familiar with this. That Jesus, who is the creator of the universe, is inviting us to have a relationship with him. And we know that this is a relationship like no other. In this relationship with him, we can be perfectly known because he has made us. We are perfectly loved because he is love. There is no other relationship that we will ever have that is going to fulfill us the way that a relationship with our creator will. It's a relationship that is unlimited. And the Bible tells us about some of the nature of that relationship that we can have with him. In Romans, which is a letter that's found in the New Testament, you can find it there if you want to go and read that for yourself. In chapter 8, Paul, who's the writer of that letter, is writing to Romans, and in verses 38 to 39 he says that when we've chosen to be in that relationship with Jesus, there is nothing that can separate us from him. That there is nothing on this earth or beyond that can take that relationship away. It's a permanent relationship. It's a relationship in which we are perfectly loved, permanently secure, in which there's no limit to the amount of input and investment we can have. There's no limit to that relationship that we can have with Jesus. What he offers us is relational fulfillment unlike any other relationship that we could ever have, because there is no one else that is God. Only Jesus is able to know us fully. Only Jesus knows our days before we do. Only Jesus understands our every thought, our every feeling. Only Jesus is able to move in us in a way that brings us into a place of fulfillment in the way that he does. And there is, like I said, no other relationship that's ever gonna fulfill that. And I think it looks a little bit like this. In Romans, a bit earlier on in that chapter 8, Paul talks about us being heirs with Jesus. What he means is that when we choose to have a relationship with Jesus, what we have in him is unlimited. We have access to peace and to grace and to love and we are seen in a way that is unlimited, that we are loved in a way that is unlimited, and that we can draw from what Jesus gives us in a way that is unlimited. And it's a little bit like this. It's a little bit like access to funds, and this normally this would be an access to our own personal funds, but imagine that this is kind of like a company card, or gives you access to funds that are not yours, that are more than what you could generate for yourselves. That it's like access to funds that are unlimited, that that will never end. And that's what it's like. The relationship with Jesus is access to him in a way that is unlimited, access to his nature, his character, and all that he brings in a way that is unlimited. And therefore, because we are totally fulfilled relationally, because we have all our needs met by the greatest person that we could ever have a relationship with, we are then able to use some of that and to think about and to bless and to invest in others. So we're no longer helpless. We're no longer helplessly hoping that somebody will input into us, that somebody will call, that someone will invite us. And we're no longer hoarding all that we have. We're no longer keeping it all to ourselves and hoping that others won't drain us of the things that we can acquire for ourselves. But now, instead, we are choosing to be fulfilled in our relationship with Jesus and draw from that in a way that blesses others. Well, I hope that you find that helpful. I hope that you have connected with that. We're just going to take some time now to speak to Jesus about that. I don't know if you've already recognized yourself as someone who can lean towards helplessness or someone who can lean towards hoarding. But if you have, I would encourage you to speak to Jesus about that. Ask him to speak to you about your response to loneliness, and how you can choose to look to him instead for the things that will fulfill you in a way that nothing else will. So we're going to take 5 minutes now. We're going to count that down on the screen for you, so you don't need to go anywhere or pause it. So take this time just to speak to Jesus about how you respond to loneliness. And allow him to speak to you. If you are not used to praying, if this is not something that you've done before, don't worry, there is no right or wrong way for you to speak to Jesus. Just have a conversation with him and tell him where you are at, how you are feeling, and ask him to speak to you. If you already know how to pray, if you have prayed all of your life, then you know what to do. But still, ask the Spirit of God to speak to you about your response to loneliness and where he is calling you to look to him for the things that fulfill you in a way that nothing else will. Hi, welcome back. I hope you've had a chance to speak to Jesus and to allow him to speak to you about your response to loneliness and about where he is calling you to look to him instead of helplessness and look to him instead of hoarding, and to allow him to fulfill you in ways that no other relationship can. As always, we want to end these videos with something that helps us all to action the things that we've heard and that we've learned about each week. So for this week, as and when we're choosing now to reject helplessness and to reject hoarding as our response to loneliness, and as we are choosing Jesus to fulfill our relational needs, I would ask you to introduce others to that option. You know that the people in your life might be feeling lonely as well. You might know people that don't know Jesus yet. If you do, tell them about Jesus. Tell them about the third option. Introduce them to that idea that they also can have access to a relationship of unlimited nature with someone who knows them and loves them and cares for them in a way that nobody else does. That they are not alone and that they don't have to live their lives feeling lonely and responding in either helplessness or hoarding. Introduce them to Jesus. If you know people that already know Jesus, then remind them that Jesus is the answer. As in when you encounter people that are lonely, that are feeling like they're not fulfilled enough by the relationships that they have, remind them about Jesus. Remind them that they have an option to choose to invest in that relationship and to be fulfilled by him in a way that nobody else can. As and when you go about this week, and as and when you are choosing to allow Jesus to fulfill you, look for opportunities to bless others, to invest in others, to spend time with others in a way that draws from your experience with Jesus and helps them get closer to him too. I'd love to hear how that goes. I'd love to hear about the conversations that you'll have with people and what Jesus will do in your life as well as in theirs. So as and when you do that, and as and when God moves, do share that with us. Tell us how that goes. You can get in touch and share with people that you know in our community, or post it on our Facebook page or wherever, so that we can all be encouraged by the things that Jesus is doing in you and through you and in the people that you're surrounded by. Well, I hope that you have a really good week. Go well, and I'll see you soon.